everyone, and welcome to Getting In, a College Coach Conversation. Next week is our 300th show. I don't know, I think I forgot to promote this last week, but if you want to get in and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, that will enter you into a contest to win 2 free hours of assistance, whether from one of our admissions experts or one of our finance experts. So I know that plenty of people need help on both the admissions and the finance side. So if you would like that to be you, go leave us a review, and we're going to be selecting a name and announcing it on next week's show. We're doing 2 segments on myths today. We have a lot of them out there floating around related to college admissions, related to college financial aid, related to merit aid, all that good stuff. My personal favorite myth floating around right now is the idea that high school is 2 words. 1 word. It is not 1 word. It is 2 words. See, I can't even say it because I have no idea why this is happening. I don't know how many essays I've read this year where students are referring to it as high school. 1 word is 2 words. Oh, and by the way, it's also not capitalized. Neither is freshman year, sophomore year, junior year, or senior year. Not proper nouns. Okay? Myth dispelled. All right. Before we get to that, we know that many of you are planning to submit applications with November 1 deadlines. It is probably the biggest deadline of the year, at least of the earlies. And we have some advice on how to know if you're ready to finally pull the trigger and press submit. And joining me today is my colleague, Joy Biscornet. Hi, Joy.
Hi, Beth.
So
good
Joy,
to see you today.
Good to see you too. Joy, as I mentioned, she works here with me at College Coach, and she also has done admissions at Boston College, at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, at Lafayette, and at Ursinus. And on top of all that, she's also been a college counselor. So not only has she read lots of early stuff coming in, but she has also sat with students while they were trying to decide, like, am I ready to push the button? So all this to say, Joy, you are the perfect person for us today. And I guess my first question to you is, when students are getting close to the deadline and starting to think, geez, am I ready to submit? What is some of the advice that you give to them?
Well, the first thing that I will say to them is, have you looked over your application and your essay more than once? So a lot of students will make that first draft, fill in the application and say, done. Because they're just so anxious, I think, and excited to just get that application in, especially that first one. I think getting over that first hurdle of pressing submit for the first time is a really big deal. But you don't want to do that too fast. So the first thing that I'll say is look at it more than once. Make sure that you've read all the questions in the application completely, because sometimes the way a question is worded, you might think that you're supposed to check yes, but you check no. So you want to make sure that you go through and with a clear head and have answered all those questions correctly. And then you also want to take time for that essay, the main college essay, whether it be for the Common App or the UCs, the 4 of them, or the Coalition app, to make sure that you've answered the prompt completely, that all of your thoughts that you wanted to share are in that essay, and that it makes sense. The first time through for an essay is rarely what will be the final draft.
I would say never. I have
never
once have I read an essay that the student sat down and wrote and sent to me, and I said, done. I have had essays that needed only some minor corrections, rare. But yes, I would have to agree with you. If all you've done is 1 draft of that essay, at the very least, you're going to need to do a second one.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. What about on the flip side of that? You've done so many drafts that you're almost stuck in a spiral of, but it could be better. I need to make it better. And, what do you say to those students?
I actually, at some points, I will be quite honest and say, if you touch it anymore, you're going to start to make it worse. You're going to slide back, and your revisions aren't going to be helpful. They're actually going to start to negatively impact the overall message that you've worked so hard to craft, and with an authentic voice, and really make it sound like it's an essay that only you could write. So when that happens, I will often recommend to a student, step away from your essay. Put it in your desk. If you're writing notes,
Hands up,
hands up, step back, and go do something else, whether it be work on a supplemental essay for another application, or do some schoolwork, or just take a walk outside around around the block, just to clear your head. Because oftentimes we're so invested in making this essay perfect that it feels like, I can't be done. I've worked on this for so long. How can I let it go? But at that point, that's when if you're doing minor edits, a comma here, or you're deciding between is it a semicolon or a comma, you're done.
Right, exactly. There is a point. And perfectionism can be a problem in general. And I think it really rears its head with college applications. And certainly you want to give it the attention it deserves, but you don't want to give it more attention than it deserves. And if it's taking over your life, that's a bad sign.
Right.
One thing that I suggest to all the students that I work with is I ask them to have it proofread by someone else. There are a few different reasons for this, but one of the big ones is because I've often seen everything that's in there so many times that if there was a typo, and I haven't caught it yet, I'm probably not going to. And the student, same thing. Your eye just kind of can gloss right over things sometimes. So what's your advice in terms of proofreading and things like that?
Mm-hmm. One thing I will do for a student is I'll have them read the essay out loud, because reading it out loud is a little bit different than reading it to yourself. Because like you said, Beth, at this point, if this is your fourth or fifth time kind of reading through it, or you're on what should be your final draft, what you want to say. So oftentimes you can have words in your head that aren't actually there. So reading it out loud can actually help you catch typos, or words that should be flipped, or something like that. The other thing that I strongly recommend is sharing your essays with someone that you trust, who hasn't been looking over it day after day for week after week. It could be a parent, it could be a teacher, it could be your school counselor, someone who knows you and that you trust to give you honest feedback and say, yeah, this looks great. You've done a solid job. This sounds like you. So always a second set of eyes is invaluable. I wouldn't necessarily say give it to a friend, because they're going through the same process as you. And they might not have as much life experience as an adult to say, yeah, this is a great topic, or you might want to make this small revision. And since it's a stressful time of year, you don't want to add to the stress by showing your friend an essay and then having them worry, well, is my essay good enough? Because an essay is personal to the individual student.
Right. And I think to that same end, I noticed that you mentioned showing it to one person. So if you've already been working with someone on that essay, or, that might be the person. If you are thinking, well, I got one person's opinion, that was great, they loved it, let me get 5 more people's opinion, that's when things really start to go off the rails. I am constantly amazed at people who decide that they think they know and are weighing in with advice and opinions that they aren't helpful, and can in fact send students into a tailspin, because the student is saying, this is my essay, it's done. Can you just make sure? I'm not suggesting that you say, please rubber stamp it, but if you have a week to go before your deadline, you're not rewriting the essay at this point entirely, right? You're going to make little changes potentially, but too many cooks in the kitchen means that your voice is typically gone by the end of that. So I think one, not multiple, would be my
I
advice.
totally agree. One person give another perspective, and then take the person's advice into account while also remaining true to yourself.
Yes.
And this is a good suggestion. This sounds like something I want to add, but don't just lose yourself in the essay because someone else has made suggestions.
Right. And if you know that you're someone who is not going to be able to ignore any feedback that you get, that's even more reason to keep it to one person who you really trust, who you think has good judgment, because I've seen kids just come unglued from getting feedback from even two different people because they don't know how to leave aside what they don't agree with and incorporate what they do agree with. So
right. And then you feel stuck in the middle and you who to trust, and you don't even trust your own gut, which is important for making sure that the essay says what you to say.
right, exactly what you wanted to say. You had another good, when you and I were talking about this beforehand, you had another great thing that you say to a student, when you're talking about if they're ready or not to submit. And I think this is really important message for people to hear. So can you kind of share that idea with all of us?
Sure. When I'm done with my feedback for students, and I've done all of the tweaks for grammar and everything like that, and I have nothing left to really offer as advice, I will ask a student, what do you think of this essay? Are you proud of this essay? Proud of the work they put into it? And for most students, it makes them take a beat, and they think about it. I can often see the look in their eye where they say, I am. Yeah, I like this essay. And I'll say, is this something that you want to submit to an admission committee? Yeah, it is. And I think that's a good step in getting psyched up to press the submit button. And if a student is at all hesitant, then we'll talk about it to say, well, what's on your mind? Why keeping you from feeling like this is your best work? And oftentimes it's just, second guessing because this is such a big deal, and just talk through it and acknowledging that it's and a stressful time doesn't mean that you haven't done good work. So are you proud of it? It sounds great. Grab the credit card to put in the information to pay for the application and move on.
And be done with it. Exactly. Here's a question for you. When you were reading applications, ever read a perfect application? Ever said to yourself, oh my God, this is perfection. And, I've never read one like it and I never will again. Ever have that happen?
Oh, because students aren't no one is perfect. I've read essays that I've looked and said, this is great, but I'm not looking for perfection. I'm looking in reading essays, and when I was in admissions, I wasn't looking for perfection to kind of mount an essay on my wall and say, this is the essay by which all others will be compared. I wanted an essay that I could look and say, this sounds like a student that I would like to get to know. I'd like to meet them on campus and have a cup of coffee. They have things to share. Perfection never came into it. It was it authentic? Did the application as a whole give me a good picture of who the student is, both outside the classroom? That was my focus, not looking to say perfection.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously it was a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek question, but same. And, I never saw an application that I have always in my head remembered, like, boy, that was amazing. And I can tell you that I could count on one hand the number of truly amazing pieces of writing I read when I was reading applications. And these were coming from some of the very best students in the country and the world. But a lot of them had successful essays, but not essays that I would say to them, hey, you should submit this to the New Yorker. This should be, this belongs in published work, right? So,
right.
And I think that's really important for everyone to keep in mind. Colleges are looking for authentic, you said authentic, So important. They want an authentic voice of a teenager sharing something important about themselves, helping them get to know a little piece of who they are, which is all you can do in an application. And if you feel like you've done that, it's probably time to press submit.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Any last words for our listeners?
I would just say, remember, this is an exciting time, and take it in stride and yourself the time to your applications over one last time. And then after you hit submit, be excited. That was an accomplishment, and keep going because there's more work to be done.
Yes, there is lots of other applications. Joy, thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Beth.
All right, we're going to take a really quick break. And when we come back, we are talking about some of the top financial aid and just college finance myths that we hear. A couple that are related, I think, to COVID, but just then a few others that we're hearing a lot lately. So don't go away.